Okay, let's have a look at your latest challenge. I am currently in a weird sort of layout. Usually I'd be just in the wide layout like this and have my game view maximized to play. But I'll just play it and I'll show you, and then I'll explain why. So what's happening in this scenario or this example is we spawn on the sand plane. We have a house or sort of like just a box that is created around us with a roof and a doorway. And when we hit this trigger, this is supposed to be a switch trigger, we build a bridge. The trigger disappears obviously, so we can't keep triggering that bridge over and over and over, but we build a bridge so we can get to the other side. The grass is always greener on the other side. So how does all this happen? And going back to that reason why I had the layouts a bit weird is I just drag the scene down so I can see the game view and the scene view at the same time. Because when I play, whoops, sorry, you've got to turn the maximize on play, turn that off to take advantage of this view. So when I play, I can actually see and push escape. I can actually move around in my scene view as if I was designing this, but really the game is playing and it's live and the cubes have been generated. So it's a good way for me to move around and make sure things are, or look at where things are being put in terms of the X, Y, and Z, and see if there's any gaps in like the walls and stuff, and see if it fits and goes where it's supposed to be, blah blah blah. So that's why I'm in this view. Let's have a look at the code very quickly. This is the code. I'll just zoom out slightly, so maybe go to 100, no, maybe a little bit more, 70. It's not that much code, to be honest, and you'll recognize chunks of this because we've already built walls. It's just multiple sections of walls using different variables and different X, Y, Z positions. So let's get started. I think let's try and make this together. Well, I'll go through it and I'll explain it. I'm going to turn all the instantiates off. So what we have here is, I'll save this and I'll zoom back in. What we have here is a bunch of loops, but inside of those loops actually nothing is happening. I've commented out the instantiates. So I'll come over here and I'll show you what I mean. If I push play, nothing happens. I'm going to go over that. There's no bridge, there's no nothing. So we can now go through each section and see what exactly is going on here. So the first thing that happens is, well, the first thing, if you're going to do this with me, these two planes are set at 5, 0, and 5, and the planes are 2 by 2. There's obviously no y because they're flat planes. The second plane, maybe I should look at it this way. The second plane is at 50 on the X and 5 on the Z still, and the same size 2 and 2. And basically, in theory, we're just making a box. We're putting the FPS controller in at position 4, 1, and 4, and basically in the middle of the sand plane, and the goal is to make it over to here onto the greener side using a bridge that we generate using this triggered by this button. So first thing is though, let's break this code down. First thing that happens in here is this complicated 2 or 3 nested for loop. We've done 2 nested, but we've got a 3 nested here. So this is saving a lot of code if we think about it, where we would be repeating this, I don't know how many times. We could work it out, but that's for another time. Let's have a look exactly what's going on here, because I just uncommented that. And that's play. Okay, so if I escape and I will just get a better view on that, we can see that it's creating these 2 walls over here. So we know that if we click back here, we know that that's the X that goes that way on the red axis, and the Z is the blue axis. So keep that in mind. The first loop is for the Z. Let's go through these variables. Let's count and go through these variables so you'll get a better understanding. This is obviously going to be the production of a wall. And this outer loop is going to be, if you notice here, we have something a bit funky. Usually we would just +1 or -1 on every iteration. But on this one, the outer, the parent for loop, we're actually plussing 8. Why would we plus 8? Let's have a look. This is going to start at 1, Z, on the Z axis. So this is 1 here. And if we just track this Z variable, and let's ignore this stuff for the time being, Z starts at 1. We're going to loop through this loop while Z is less than 10. And every time we loop, every time we come back, we're going to plus 8 to the Z variable. So Z is 1. So the first time we loop and we eventually find ourselves in this inner child loop and we're setting the variable Z is still 1. So the first time around Z is going to be 1. That's fair enough. And Z is 1 here on this, if you think about the Cartesian plane. Then after that we're going to loop around and add 8 to Z, so 1, because we started off with 1. 1 plus 8 is going to be 9. Is 9 less than 10? Yes, 9 is less than 10, so we're going to continue into this loop and come down here. So the second time we come down and finally find ourselves in this loop, after we've gone through these loops, is the Z value is going to be 9. So this value up here must be 9. 1 and 9 on this way, the blue axis is the Z axis. So all we're really doing is building this first wall and this second wall. This part of the code, these two for loops, is building one wall, and then we're repeating a second time and building a second wall. Because if we follow this loop again, sorry, going back to this loop, if we're at 9 and then we head back again and loop, we add, this is, we're going to add 9, we're going to add 8 to 9. That's going to equal 9 plus 8 is 17. And then we're going to check our middle section. Is 17 less than 10? No, it's not. So we're going to exit the loop. We're going to exit these curly brackets here and go on to the next thing. So we know now that this outer loop here is only looping twice. So that means this stuff in here, these loops in here happen 2 times. So that must mean that it's doing these walls once and twice. Now, let's explain this very shortly as well. We have a Y. So the Y is the up, going up. And we're doing that we're doing that 5 times, so we're starting at 0 and we're going up by 1 every time. So 1. So this wall is made up of bricks of how many? 5. I can't draw with the mouse. And however many bricks across, but we're going 1, 2, 3, 4. Must be 4 high. No, sorry. That starts at 0, doesn't it? Let me escape that. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That is how many blocks high this thing must be. So I say that because we start at 0, so we're starting at this 0 position on the Y, which is the lowest line or row, and then we come into the loop and then we start a new loop that says x equals 1 we start at 1. So this X here, if we, no, I can't without losing my drawing, but X is this other scale. Remember that that's the Z. This is the X. So this X here must be 1. So we're going to start at 1 and go 9 times across here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, 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 that way, along here, and make a row of bricks or blocks. And then once we finish that row of blocks, so we've done one row at 1, so this will be 1, 2, 3, blah, 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 blah. The Y is going to be set at 0 the whole time. And the Z from the outer parent for loop is going to be set, the first time is going to be set to 1 also. So the only thing changing here is the X column, or the X coordinate, the first time around, and that will create this first row of blocks. The second time around, we're going to do exactly the same thing with the X variables, because we want to draw another line of blocks, but this time Y is going to shift up 1 to Y equals 1. So now all these are going to be changed to 1. We're still inside of this first iteration or for loop, because we haven't gone up to this root for loop or parent for loop yet. So that's going to be set to 1 still also. We're still in the 5 loop, so Y is 0 the first time it comes around, then it's plusing 1, 1. 1 is less than 5, okay, then it becomes 2, then it becomes 3, then it becomes 4, and then we plus 1 to 4, becomes 5. Is 5 less than 5? No, so we're going to exit this whole thing, and by that time we would have built this whole wall. And when we exit that, then we go back to the original what we were looking at just before. We go through and it loops again and it makes a whole new wall again, except it moves it plus 8 on the this way on the Z. So this 1 becomes a 9. And then it scrolls through all the blocks again to create that second wall over here. So I hope that sort of makes sense, but that's how the logic works, and that's what's happening in this first. Looks like it's complicated, but when you sort of break it down like this, it's not so hard at all, I don't think. Second thing is these next loops should be much easier now to understand. Second thing is, that's stop this and play again. That is the rear wall. So, whoops, I'll leave the play on. I'll just pause it. So we've built the 2 walls here, 1, 2. So that's happening here. Now we've built a rear wall. That's happening here, and you'll notice that this is very similar to this inner here. But we only want one wall in the position of, I think it starts at, well, we can see exactly where it starts. The Z starts at 1, and so where is the Y starts at 0. Okay, that's going up, but so the X is starting at 0 too, so it's here. And then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, blah, 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 goes that way. But on this column here of 0 on X, because this way is the X. If we were to set this X here value to 1 or 2, then this wall would go over 1 and start at 1 or 2. And that wall would be drawn along here or along here. So that's what's happening here. So if we were to label this, we would say this is the rear wall of the house. And let's go up and label this as the two side walls of the house. Okay, let's take the instantiate, uncomment the instantiate here, and let's figure out what this is doing. Let's play again. Okay, this is the part that you've probably been wondering about. This is going to be the start of our doorway. Now, I remember seeing someone try to make the whole doorway as one prefab and then just instantiate that one whole wall as a prefab. That'd be great if we were builders and we wanted to, prefabricate things like they do in in industry now, in construction. But that's not the point of this. So let's figure out what's going on here. Just move that to the side a bit. We are simply making another wall on that same axis as the one above of the rear wall of the house, which is this one over here. We are making it so this was set on the 0 of x. Let's scroll over here like this and have a look at it from this view, so we get a sense of the Cartesian plane thing. So this was started at 0 on x, because that is x and this is z. And in this loop, you'll notice that we don't go for 10 times. So this is 10 blocks long or wide. We go for how many? 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks. We go a little bit under halfway to make, or just stop to make just a, it's the same thing, we're just stopping at, here. So that's all that's happening here. This is the first part of the doorway. If we guess what's going to happen in the second part, we're probably going to see that this wall starts here and just draws its blocks, continues drawing its blocks to the end of the wall section there, leaving this walkway gap through here that we can walk through. So if we think about this in code, you can see that, I'll get rid of this, these blocks go from 1, 2, 3, 4, like here, and then ends at 4 and stops this whole loop. And then after 4, we don't continue after 4, we leave a gap and we start at 7, 8, 9, 10. We actually go for 3 blocks there. So let's uncomment this, and you'll see the rest of the doorway appear. There it is. That part and that part is, if I put my code back on, is this part. So this is the, how would you call this? This is the, if I'm facing outwards, this is the right, we'll just call it the, yeah, we'll call it the right side of, well, it depends which way you're looking at it. We'll just call this doorway. Doorway 1 and doorway 2. Alright. Now, what have we got after this? We have to make a massive roof. Well, it's kind of easy, because if we're looking at from this, especially from this perspective, all we need to do is create blocks again and just go across in like a flat panel to cover the roof. We're just doing the same thing as we did as we built a wall, except we are not going up on the Y axis, we're going across on the Z and the X, and leaving the Y at a static, if that makes sense. So let's have a look. What's going on here? We go X on the 10, Z on the 10, and we leave Y at 5. So the 5 is the height of the box, or the walls, sorry. So this is going to be our roof. I wish it would compile a little bit faster. And there's our roof. Roof made. So we've gone through the code to make this cut house thing. Let's go through how to make the stairs, or the first part of the bridge. If you notice here, I'll just sort of I'll go back to an overview sort of the code here. All that house code happens inside of the start function. This next part where the bridge is happens inside of an onTrigger function, because we want this to happen when we go over that. We're going to call it a switch, the box switch, but it's just a cube with an onTrigger selected. So make sure that if you're following this and you're doing it yourself, you can see, or you know where code is going. I'm going to go back to 200, and we have nothing in the update function, and we're going straight into a new onTrigger enter function. I've named that cube bridge switch, so we know that if we interact with other objects, not to do this every time. We only want this bridge to occur if we go through the trigger of a bridge switch game object, which is only one. There's only one there on the map. So what's the first thing that we do? Let's take this off and have a look-see. I'm going to push play. I'm going to walk through this, and bang. Alright, staircase. Staircase is the first loop. Let's have a look at this in design view and try and get our heads around this code. I'll bring this just over a little bit. Alright, so we're starting Y at 0, so that's this level because Y goes up. That's Y. We're starting at 0, that's why it's halfway through the map too, or through the plane. And we're going up by 1 every time, so there should be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we exit the loop when we get to Y is 5, because 5 is not less than 5, so then we skip out of this loop. So while we're in each loop, we are making obviously a full step, a row of blocks. We're starting at Z is 1, and we have a funky little thing going on over here, which we'll get to in a second. But Z is going to start at 1, and Z goes this way on the axis, and the X goes this way. So this must be comprised of 4 blocks. I'm bad at drawing this, but 4 blocks. And we're basically just going one block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks every time. What's happening here though is this 13 number is this position here on the X. If you look here, 0 on the X was down here somewhere, down here somewhere, and that was 1, 2, 3, blah blah blah, all the way up to we're about at this is 13 right here. And every time we want to loop through this and make this staircase, we don't just want to go up 1 like making a wall. We would just go straight up. We also, on every 1, we want to go, so on every one block, we want to go up one, and we also want to go across one, meaning if this was the Y, we would also want to go across one on the X every loop. So that's what's happening here. We're starting at 13 and we're plussing one of the Y's, which is up here. So let's go through this first one. 13 plus 0 is 13. 13 plus, if we're going through the loop again, 13 plus, because Y will now 0 plus 1 is 1. So Y is 1. So we come through here and 13 plus 1 is going to be 14 on the X. Remember, this is the X, Y, and Z. Next time around, we come around. 1 plus 1 is now equal to 2. We're still under 5. So now 13 plus 2 is going to be this block here, 15. And we're also, because Y is set here, we're also going up by 1 at the same time. Up, up, up. So we make a naturally shaped sort of staircase. That's what's happening here. So let's name this. This is the first staircase. I can guess what's going to happen here. Let's uncomment this, go and check it out. Alright, it's the bridge section. Whoops. It's the bridge section of the, or the middle section, flat section of the bridge. This is quite easy because we're going to use that same thing that we did to build the stairs, except the static, it's going to be static along the Y, because the Y is now, the Y was at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's have a look. Y, there it is, Y is set to a static 4 and it doesn't change. So we simply just draw blocks, rows of blocks along the X, and rows of blocks of 4 blocks, I think it is, yep, along the Z. So that's one row of blocks here and then another row of blocks here. So that's what's happening in this section of nested for loops. We do that for, we go from 18, from about here is on the X scale, 18, all the way to the other side of the platform, which is about 40x. So that's why that number is so large, because we need the platform to go quite a long way. So this is the middle of the bridge. This is the very last loop, and this is obviously going to be the downstairs, or the second staircase to the green plane. And this is probably the hardest one to get your head around, because it's easy going up and plussing 1 all the time. But how do we make that thing go down? Well, this is how we do it. Just put that over here so we can see it. We loop the same amount of times on the Y. So we start at 1. But technically 1 on the Y is down here, right? And we're plussing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That makes sense. But if we're plussing and we're traveling in this direction, wouldn't that make our stairs go upwards this way? How does that make it go down? When we enter the for loop in here, this is always going to be the same, because we always want to make a row of blocks along the Z. So 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks. That's fair enough. But on the next iteration, when we go up to this parent loop, we want to actually go down on the y, not up on the y. So what we do here is we say 39 plus y, remember this is the x value, and this is the y value, and this is a z. We start at 39 because on the x value down here, going this way, this is 39, 40, yeah, from here, and then 41, blah 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 on the x-axis, and we plus y to that. So every time we draw a line of a step, we want to go that way, and we start at 39, and that's fine because we start at 1. So the first loop in, we start the bricks at 40. This is 40, and then this is 41, and this is 42, 43, 44 on the x-axis. So that makes sense. The y though is a little bit more confusing because again, we're not going up, we need to go down. So what we simply do is we start at 5, which is the height of this. I'm going to get rid of this drawing and start again. We start at 5, that's the height of the y. That's the y, and this is 5. And we simply take 1 away. So if we're starting y at 5, take away 1, that'll be 6. No, not 6. It would be 6 if we were plussing. It would be 4. So our first set of blocks is 1 down from 5, 4 on the y, if we're looking at this scale on here, the y-axis. Next one is 3, next one is 2, and the next one is 1, because we're starting at 5 and using the y counter to take away from that initial number. So we go downwards instead of going up. If we left this as an example, if I just change this to, left it to y, let's say, let's see what would happen. We would get basically an identical shape as the upstairs. We don't see this brick here. This brick actually needs to start up here and travel downwards. Up here and travel downwards, not start here and travel upwards like it did over here on this side. So that's why we start at 5, and then we take away -1 every time. -1, -1, -1, as we're also going this way on the x-axis. So there's a solution for the downstairs to grass. The very last thing we do here is not related to these algorithms and these loops. We just get rid of the switch cube. And we do that because if we don't, then every time we go over that cube here, again, we would just keep drawing over and over and over and over and over this bridge, and it would slowly crash our computer. I'm going to put this back to 5, take away y, because it didn't fix our stairs. And there is our grass is greener with the bridge. Done. So this is what you have to make. Try and do it without, looking at this code. I'll zoom out again so you can sort of see it as a whole in sections. So this is the first part, and this is the last part. But try and figure that out yourself just based on the template that I will provide also in this task. Good luck.